For the past 4 weeks, I've been working in an isometric mobile game called Allete. Allete is a super chill puzzle game that I made for the Brackeys Game Jam 2021.1 that I'm now continuing post-jam. In the game, you're a cube who can split to form smaller cubes you combine with other smaller cubes to form bigger ones. Last week, I finished off all the core mechanics and forgot to say that I made 3 levels. This week, I also did cool stuff. I started out the week just like I do every other week, which is of course to do a bit of planning. Last devlog I talked a lot about this, so if you're interested in how I use codecs, you should probably go watch that. And as usual, the project's codecs board is linked in the description. When that was all done, I decided to address some feedback I got on the jam version. Basically, someone found that they could do this. And that's bad because the orange players shouldn't be able to go on the pink tile. My solution to this was to make an interface called iMoveValidator. This interface just has 2 methods. One is called isValidMove, and the other is called undoMove. I feel like these are pretty self-explanatory. Anyway, I made my isometric movement script to implement that interface. Then when 2 smaller players combine, I check if the ground tile that they're combining on is a valid move for the bigger player. If not, then I undo each player's last move, which gives us this, which is pretty cool. Now, still in the world of acting on feedback, BlueVolt said that he thought the glow of the objects should match their color. If you haven't watched the other devlogs, the glow in each object is just a 2D freeform light that I have shaped to fit each object. And it's a small change, but it really makes a big difference and it makes the game look a lot better. If any of you have suggestions for the game, just let me know in the comments and I'd be happy to try them out. For some reason, people seem to like the levels that I made in the jam version. This was honestly really surprising for me because I made them all on the last day and I have no clue what I'm doing when it comes to level design, or really any part of game development for that matter. But besides my terrible level designing skills, one of the struggles that I had while making the levels was that they were too short. This is because I had to fit the entire puzzle within the camera's viewport, and I kind of want more space so I can make better levels, so I'm gonna fix that. To start, I decided I would split the world up into rooms, and each room would be the size of the camera. I then needed a way to transition between rooms, and to do that, I took inspiration from Celeste. Unfortunately, I've actually never played Celeste, but I know how the camera works. In Celeste, most of the levels take up about 1 screen, and to transition between levels, the camera will swing to the next level. I figured I'd add this to my game, except instead of transitioning between levels, I transition between different parts of the same level. With that idea in mind, I got to work. I started by placing these 2 triggers on the outside of the camera, which would detect when the player leaves the screen. I then fired off an event which took in the direction the player was moving, which the camera listened into and then used doTween to move in that direction. I calculated the increments it needed to move in by getting the camera's orthographic bounds as a bounds struct. For this, I just wrote this little extension method. And because I'm an incredible game developer that gets everything right on the first try, this worked perfectly. Anyway, I got it to work, but it was looking kinda bad, so I added some motion blur using a post-processing volume. And once again, it looked pretty cool, but I had an issue with the camera. You'll notice that if the big player is split into 2 and one crosses, the other gets completely hidden because they're on the other screen. You can just ignore that other bug. But anyway, I asked some people how they thought I should fix this, and Jay from Pens and Pixels said that the camera should zoom out. It sounded like a really good idea, and I really wanted to try it, but first I had to rework my current system. Well, okay, I didn't need to, but for the sake of a clean code base, I figured I should. I started by making a grid where each cell was the size of a room. I went with a grid for this because it's a lot easier to just move to a grid cell than it is to do all this math that I was doing. I then took those triggers, which I previously had attached to the camera, and put them on the grid lines. Like before, when the player collided with one of the triggers, I fired off an event, but this time it didn't take in the player's direction. Instead, I have a list of all of the things I want the camera to target. In this case, it's just either 1 or 2 players. I then checked the number of grid cells that the camera targets were taking up, and then move the camera to the center of them. This method and the old method are pretty much the same to the person playing the game. But not only does this give me a cleaner code base, it allows me to actually implement the camera zooming. To do this, I get the amount of grid cells that the camera targets are taking up, similar to the movement. I then multiply that by the camera's initial orthographic size. And of course, I finish it off by using a doTween method to tween the camera's orthographic size. Is what I would have said if I used the right doTween function. But anyway, it works, and I'm not gonna lie, I really love this camera. But of course, maybe you don't, so let me know what you think in the comments. With the camera done, I wanted to move on to other stuff, but first I needed more colors in the palette. In the first devlog, I made this custom color palette, so if you're interested in that, you should probably go watch it. But anyway, I added 4 new colors to the palette, and they look really cool. When that was done, I decided to actually put those 4 new colors to use and make portals. I was originally thinking I was gonna draw some new art for these, but then I realized I drew this isometric sphere in a previous episode. So I recolored it with one of the new colors in the palette, and then added these really cool particles which had a negative speed to make it look like they were being sucked in. You'll also notice that the portal is bobbing up and down. To do this, I just attached a script to each portal which would make it move based off of a sine wave. In addition to all this, I gave the portal a point light which would just make it stand out a little more. Then in a script on each portal, I first check if we're colliding with an object that implements an eye teleportable interface. As usual, my isometric movement script was the script to implement this interface. The eye teleportable interface just has 2 things. First, it has a public getter called can teleport, and in pair with that, it has a method called teleport. In the portal script, we then check if the eye teleportable we're colliding with can teleport. And if it can, I teleport the eye teleportable to the current portal's linked portal's position. The linked portal is just another portal that I have assigned in the inspector. On top of all this, I made it so that when the eye teleportable teleports, I make both portals do a do-tween animation. And finally, when the portals teleport and eye teleportable, I fire off the same event that handles the room transitions. This is just in case the camera needs to resize or move based off of a teleport. And once again, I'm super happy with how this came out. And with that, it was Friday, so I had to start editing the devlog. My goal is to release this game for Apple and Android when it's done, so if that interests you, stick around. I also recently started a podcast, which is pretty cool. And yeah, hit like if you like, also hit like if you dislike, and please subscribe. And have a great day.